Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Teaching for Sustainability. Today, we're joined by Emma Hunter-Lacey, music coordinator and class teacher at Sandhills Community Primary. And Emma, you're also the primary sustainability lead for the River Learning Trust. Do you want to just explain a bit more about your roles and what you do?
So I wear many hats, as we often talk about in primary schools. But I'm also really lucky that I work with a secondary cross-trust lead who is called Phoebe Mortimer. And so together we have created a sustainability handbook. So every RLT school knows kind of the steps that they need to make to try and make their school more sustainable. And we've broken it down into lots of different areas as well to make it a little bit easier and to share responsibility, because we are all about everyone joining in and helping and doing it all together rather than it just being one person crying in a corner with a watering can.
I guess we met through the UK School Sustainability Network, but your enthusiasm for sustainability has been kind of existed for many years. Kind of how is there a bit of a journey in terms of that and kind of the different networks that you've connected? So you talk about the Oxford one, but
So when I first trained to be a teacher many years ago, even when I was an NQT, I was a bit naughty, and actually I was sustainability lead at my school in my NQT year because no one else really wanted to do it or was in a position to do it, and I was like, well, sure, because I'm really passionate about it. And we were sort of really lucky at that point. We had another sustainability lead before I joined who was amazing and instigated a lot of changes into our school. It was quite a new school building. So we made a connection with Ashton, and actually we won a sort of runner-up prize with the Ashton Award in 2008, just to give you a little clue
that's
as to
early
when I
on.
started
Yeah,
teaching.
yeah,
So early on. And so it's always been a big part of our school. It's always been that culture that we include sustainability. And I remember having some people come to our school when I was very, very pregnant. So this would have been about 9 and a bit years ago. And we had people come over to our school from all over the world who were fascinated by the changes that we'd made. But they're not rocket science. And I found it amazing how everyone was like, oh, you compost your tea bags. So there were some really quite simple things that we were doing, or just having kids that were energy spies that went around schools site and turn lights off and made sure the interactive monitors were off. Lots of little incremental changes that obviously I guess some schools just wasn't on their radar, and it's always been on ours.
yeah. Let's think about the curriculum. So what is it how would you describe what you do and how are you linking it into the curriculum?
So planning an exciting curriculum is like one of my favorite things to do. So the background that I had before I went into teaching was sort of creative arts, was performance, was music. So it was really important to me to try and bring in lots of those skills. So over the years, we have tried to incorporate sustainability into our curricula, but in a creative way, because it can get a little bit, hello everyone, we're going to do some maths and we're going to look at some data from the wind turbine. And that's great. But there's so many other ways that we can get children excited and engaged. So I might use music, I might use art, but a lot of it will be in a cross-curricular way. And a few years ago, I did a project with an organisation called Chow Arts. I mean, this is going back quite a long time, where we taught the children all about climate change, basically gave them a kind of a mini carbon literacy unit. And then we taught them about how can you make a house truly sustainable. And then they did all these designing projects. And they learned about green energy. They learned about, growing your own fruit and veg, but also about how can we work as a smart city? How can we all work together? So we kind of talked about a lot of different things. And then we did a performance where we sort of brought to life basically what climate change is and how it's caused. And then I wrote the music with an amazing musician called Joe Swarbrick. And that was one of my first sort of endeavours into like using music and drama to really explain what climate change is and how it's happening. I think the arts, and don't let me get started on like the lack of funding for arts and arts being cut from universities. But if we think about what most of us do when we go home and we're very tired, we will watch the telly box. And so we're all massive consumers of art, even if we don't realise we are. And so actually film and music and things that we kind of inhale are a really amazing way for us to spread the message, about what's happening in our planet. And actually, we really need the knowledge, but you can get the knowledge, that can still be integrated because it still has to be something of substance. It still has to have a truthfulness to it. It's like anything that you do. If you were to write a book, you still have to research it first. If you write a play, you need to have that research. So it's thinking about what do I need to know, and then how can I sort of disseminate that and put it out there in a digestible way that maybe will also help alleviate climate anxiety. Because I think if all you're doing is you're doing an assembly with the kids and you're telling them all about climate change, it can feel really worrying. And so maybe they need a purpose. Why are you telling me? Because now I just feel anxious and I feel like it's my fault. Whereas actually, I'm telling you all about this so that then we can do something about it and we can become climate activists, and you can, share that your parents are going to come and watch your play, or your parents are going to hear this song, or, whatever. I think you kind of need the geography and the science and the maths, but you also need a way of then processing it. And I think the arts are the perfect way.
There's a name for this approach that you've got. Is it, you call it the green lens?
So, yeah. So I really like the phrase green seasoning as well, just to say. So looking through a green lens, it's all about, because sustainability has been wiped out of our lovely curriculum, we're having to kind of find ways of putting it in. So it's really similar to what you lovely people do, where you're saying, okay, you've got a lesson on transport, you're finding about transport, but actually we can integrate all of this stuff, which is great. And so looking through a green lens, it's about saying, okay, I'm doing a unit on rivers. How can I incorporate sustainability into my normal teaching? So I'm still covering the national curriculum, but I'm doing it in a more inventive way, because actually what can happen with teaching is people can get very slide-tastic and, I'm going to show you some PowerPoints and then you're going to do some work in your book and then, that's the end. And actually, I think this makes us think a bit differently. So if you're going to talk about how a river is formed, and maybe you originally might talk about where you go into the mountains and you talk about the stream and blah, blah, blah. Hey, why don't we start with a plastic bottle that a hiker's dropped at the top of a mountain, and then actually kind of draw the journey of the plastic bottle as it then turns into microplastics. So they're learning about microplastics, they're learning about the impact of plastic on our oceans, but maybe they're doing it in a storytelling approach, which is going to be more engaging for them. And they're still learning, because obviously there's a lot of focus on writing at the moment, which is fantastic, but they need to understand the steps before they can do any writing. So, that's one sort of classic idea of looking through a green lens, but they're still learning about how a river is formed. They're still learning about meanders. They still learn about an oxbow lake, but just because they've also got Bob the plastic bottle that's, crashing along.
Yeah. What really excites me about what you're talking about and what you've been doing is that sense of, it's not just about the knowledge of the climate and nature crisis. It's saying this is an opportunity as a teacher to reflect on the way that we teach and to also be creative with the pedagogy and the way that you engage. And partly that's because recognizing it's a need for people to be able to better understand the world is how you might do this, but also kind of, to shift things up in the classroom. I kind of have an image of what your classroom and the kind of activities. Do you want to talk about any other examples there's this song, isn't it? I don't know. I feel like you haven't done justice to some of the creativity you've done with students.
Ah, well, and I think also because I'd love to do more of it, but I've been in year six the past few years, so I've definitely felt like I've not had that capacity when I've been getting ready for SATs to
Mm.
do a lot of this stuff. So I've moved back to year five now. So now I'm like, okay, right. We're doing a topic on Mexico next term, which is by no accident because it's my favorite country. So, we'll definitely be incorporating a lot of sustainability into our topic on Mexico next term. But I think that you are referring to a song that we've done in our school. So I think it was maybe a year, 2 years ago. One of the areas that often comes up in music education in a school is the need to improve composition. It's often something that teachers feel quite unconfident in teaching. So they're happy to sort of, show them the notes, get the kids to have a practice on a Glock maybe. But as soon as it's right, you're now going to compose. I think some teachers go, especially if lyrics are involved. And it can be quite complicated. But because I'm also a musician, and I think limitations are sometimes actually amazing for being creative, which I know sounds like an oxymoron, but to give you the background, I work with, it's me and a drummer, a looper pedal. I play the guitar and I sing.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I like about that is it limits me and I have to think really creatively about how I write songs. So what I did with my school is I said, right, we're going to write a song, and this is some of the idea I've got for how the verse and how the chorus go. So I played like, played them the bass line and stuff. My music's often a bit dark, so that's something I need to work on with the kids. I need to use some more major keys, I think. And then I sort of gave them the premise, and I was like, are you the future? Are you the guys that are going to fix climate change? And a few of them went, yeah. And I thought, no, guys, you're the right now. Like, you're doing your thing right now. Who needs to actually implement changes and fix climate change? It took them ages. And I was like, it's the grown-ups. People that are grown-ups right now, they're the ones that need to implement the change. So we are not the future, we are the right now, is what the kids are singing. So I gave them that. And then they came up with these verses, and we came up with some ideas with a good old-fashioned flip chart. And then I had some ideas, and I took it away, framed it into a song, brought it back, said, "Oh, are we happy with this? How does that work rhythmically? How does that rhyme work?" We had a couple of sort of slightly clunky rhymes. I can't remember, but if we want to have a green planet, why don't we blah blah planet? It didn't work, so we did some altering and changing, and then they had a song that they could then sing, and it was theirs. I think now I'm a little bit further away from it, and I've done a lot more training on climate anxiety. I don't know, I feel like I want to now do another song which is a bit more positive but has the same message, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That was a process that we went through.
What just because in terms of a lot of what you've just said there as well, I think what's the impact of what you've seen, both from a kind of there's the climate nature aspect of it, but I guess there's also this broader mix of things that doing this has an impact.
It definitely meant that I think they felt quite empowered to then like write their own songs. So I think some of them were then coming up to me and they were like, I've written this song, I've written another song. And then they're also going away and then they're kind of creating their own melodies to go with it. But they're all writing songs which are in some way to do with environmentalism. And I thought that was really interesting.
Mm.
And it was often a song they wanted to come back to and sing again and again. So yeah, I mean, it might be that we'll go back to that song, and maybe we need to edit it. I mean, I do think it still has a really relevant message that it is about, they aren't the future, they are the right now. Yeah.
What about So one thing I'm picking up on is this is a really key part of your identity and also helps you with your motivation. Do you see that with other teachers across the trust, or there are other people you talked about Phoebe before that you feel like being involved and engaging with this is kind of fundamental to what you do as a teacher?
Ooh. Um, it just really matters. It even makes me cry a tiny bit, actually. For me, it's a really emotive thing. So yeah, sustainability really matters to me, and it's something that I think has to be included. And it's also a really nice kind of green ticket to, like you're saying, really think about our pedagogical practices. To think about how are we teaching the children, and actually are we doing it in a creative, engaging way. So it's a really good vessel to kind of get to that, I think. I even did a workshop with some other teachers actually on just sort of creative practices in a classroom where we can mix things up a little bit, and we can think about our outcomes. Our outcomes don't have to be that we've sort of just written something down in a book. Like it can be that there are other things that we can do that still show that we've learned something.
Is there training that you've taken, have you done climate literacy training? Like what kind of training have you done in that space? And like, also, are there any that you'd really recommend to teachers?
So many years ago, I attended a course, like an actual in-person course, which was it was sort of climate literacy, but it was also a lot more to do with the kind of science behind climate change and the impacts and things like that. So I kind of did that as like an evening course. That was quite a long time ago, and I did that as part of a project that I then did with my class, because it was a bit like, I can't be teaching them all about climate change if I've not done, the research myself. I also did a carbon literacy course with, I want to say, the Carbon Literacy Trust, something like that. I thought that was really good because the visuals were amazing. And I really and it cost me 50 quid. And I really wanted to be able to share that with other teachers, but I wasn't allowed to, because,
Yeah.
it's theirs. And I thought the visuals were brilliant and were really helpful. In terms of, so I've actually put together with Phoebe, like a little CPD document actually that breaks down the different elements of climate change. So it's also talking about things like climate justice, climate anxiety, certain key terms that people might not know about. They're also kind of included. So we've got like a glossary for people. And Aim High have a fantastic 40-minute introduction, and it's filmed in the Eden Project, which is nice, isn't it?
Have you delivered that sort of training with Phoebe to teachers? But how has that gone?
I think that people are absolutely delighted to get some support. And I think one of the things that Phoebe and I found difficult was we can't get into people's brains and see what they don't know that they don't know, So I can say to someone, right, I would love you to plan a lesson now on oceans, but I want you to include, look through a green lens and include some elements of sustainability. And if that teacher's not got that basic knowledge to know about plastic pollution, to know about the massive impact on marine ecology, the massive demise of huge population of animals have just disappeared, let alone coral bleaching and water acidification, if they just don't know about it. We thought, okay, so we created basically a kind of questionnaire that asked them questions, so that then people were able to go, oh, I've never heard of that, I don't know what that is, or yes, I do know what deforestation is. Great. And then as a result of that, then we were able to kind of compile the CPD stuff, and then we shared the CPD stuff in our conference, because our trust is really great, and we have a sustainability conference every year where we can share CPD bits and bobs. This year we tried to kind of focus on supporting people with biodiversity so that we don't overwhelm. And we were able to work with the National Nature it's the National Education Nature Park.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they came in and they worked with us and they set all of the schools up with their own sites and stuff like that. So we're on the road, but what we would like to be able to do is offer more bespoke sessions, you know, for people that are finding some elements of sustainability a bit more of a challenge. And that's the bit we found a bit harder to actually, you know, a short 20-minute session is quite hard.
Yeah, we veered towards, like, we call it micro CPD, where we're trying to connect with experts and create short little videos that are that download for teachers, so that say they're going to go and teach a topic around, it's quite broad, but something around like water pollution or like you said, transport, they can go and look and like get a really good understanding of what the key things around sustainability in that space are at the moment.
One of my closing bits of advice is, you know, we can equip and furnish adults with the cold hard facts, but when we're sharing the knowledge with young people, we've got to be really careful about the language that we use and how we frame things. And that's another element of the teaching that Phoebe and I have been really trying to think about is it's not just about kind of how can we add in sustainability, but it's also if you're doing a maths lesson and your question is Tommy travels on a plane for 4 hours traveling at 200 miles an hour. How far has he gone? Well, actually, maybe he doesn't travel on a plane. Maybe he cycles and he does it for less time. And, you know, it's just about how you frame those questions. Or if you're making an exciting slide and you want to put some cute animals on, let's put some native animals on. So that then if a child goes, because apparently loads of children don't know what a badger is. So if they go, is that a skunk? You go, no, it's a badger and it's a native animal. And on the next slide, here's a picture of a fox and here's a hedgehog. And, you know, so it's also thinking about all of those opportunities. So it's the framing and it's how we're integrating sustainability into our existing curriculum. That's the other thing I'd say.
A useful way to explain it. I mean, the one thing we've skirted around, and you have made some reference to, are the challenges. I don't know if you wanted to kind of make anything more explicit or talk a bit more about something that was, you know, as it has happened in the sense of being a real challenge.
I mean, time is the biggest challenge. And I think lots and lots of teachers at the moment are really feeling that challenge of, I want to do a really amazing lesson. I want to do the best with my children. I really need to think about my children with SEND. Oh dear, I haven't got a TA anymore. You know, there's a lot that teachers are having to really think about. So I suppose the challenge is the time it takes to integrate things. And so I think sometimes it's about saying, all right, you're going to try and focus on like one lesson a week where you might be thinking about looking through a green lens. And also, if we're also thinking about how we change our outcomes, we're changing what the children might be doing. If a lesson is going to be, you know, storyboarding the journey of Bob the water bottle, maybe then that's less marking. You know, so then that gives you a little bit of time back. So if you've planned that lesson around Bob, you're getting that time back because you know, your child hasn't then written a massive essay about how a river is formed, you know. So it's, if you let yourself think creatively about how you're balancing your time, I would say. But I think time is the biggest challenge. And it's also, if you are a sustainability leader, this is going to sound awful, but sometimes other people are a challenge because it's getting everyone on board. Rather than my caretaker saying to me, Emma, your trees need watering. It's like, well, no, they're everyone's trees. It's just I headed up the project. So, you know, all of the classes can water the trees, and that's what we've agreed, that I'm not going to go and water all of them on my own all the time, you know. So it's trying to also foster an environment that everyone feels passionate about it, but they can help in manageable ways.
Yeah, I think that lends itself both. You was talking before about specific subjects that have traditionally taken the lead, and this idea that it's everyone's, in terms of a curriculum perspective, every subject has some sort of involvement and responsibility. But also, yeah, I think, I don't know if it's gone anywhere. There's that traditional idea of eco leads and sustainability leads, like you say, people like yourself who, there are often people who think we've kind of got that person box ticked, it's
Yeah.
sorted, but actually they meant, and I often, the analogy is literacy and numeracy. No one's turning around saying literacy is like only you. Everyone says, of course, like there's an element of literacy and numeracy in it across all the subjects, and it's trying to then shift people to think, okay, sustainability is part of that as well.
Yeah, and it's another sort of top tip would be to overcome a challenge. That if you have got a project that you want to do in your school, like updating a flower bed, there are often charities out there like Bug Life, Plant Life, that will come and support you. They might send a very lovely person to come and help, and they might even be able to donate some plants. So there are often charities. Our school is really lucky that we've got Naturehood. There's an organisation in Risinghurst, and we have this amazing chap called Mark Hanger, who without him, I think I'd be a puddle on the floor, to be honest. So he's been amazing with helping us cement a pond project. And we haven't been cementing it in, I used the wrong terminology there, but we've added a platform to it. But just getting through the red tape to do that was really hard, and it can feel like pushing against a wall. But if you keep going, if you are a dog with a bone, it will happen. Is also my other piece of advice. Just keep badgering, and then eventually it will happen. You've just got to jump through so many hoops sometimes to make things like that happen. But also, go on.
You.
I was going to say, my final other bit of advice is this year I've invited parents to come in and do a working party, so that then I've got lots of adult help to try and get a job done, and that's been really, really helpful. So I did a working party, and then parents came in and brought peat-free compost and plants, and then we potted up a whole load of massive pots around the school site, and we did that in one afternoon. So things are manageable. You've just got to think a bit differently, and also celebrate your successes, which, as you know, I'm rubbish at because I didn't share my "We're Not the Future" video.
How have you though? Give us an example of something you have celebrated. I mean, that sounded like a celebration when you invite the parents in like that, but
yeah. I mean, even things like just taking a photo of what you've done and sticking it in the newsletter, because it's really important for us to communicate what we're doing and why we're doing it. We've recently become a safe street school as well, and I think that's a great thing. So there's all sorts of amazing successes that are happening. Our trust is now all green energy, and actually we probably needed to make a bigger deal of that. So now when we have a meeting, we go, oh, by the way, everyone, all of our energy is green energy, but still turn the light off. Thanks very much. So yeah, it's really important to celebrate the successes when you have them.
oh, great. Well, thank you so much for all of that advice and kind of sharing your journey.